Okay, the first thing I want to check out on my new parts, and something I forgot to bring up. Now, as I told you, when I first put the big block in this car a long time ago, I switched from a 513 gear to a 456 because the 513 was a little crazy at the time. The car really would pull the wheels high back then, and it don't seem to do it no more. And it's not because I switched to 456; it still would do it. But this time around, I decided to step it down just a little bit to 471, or actually a higher gear, higher number, lower gear ratio. And to make sure I did receive the right ring and pinion, even if it says it on a box, you need to check this because you never know, someone may have boxed it wrong. I got 33 teeth on the ring gear, so we take 33, 7 teeth on the pinion, divided by 7, 471 gear. Always check that. Okay, we're going to drive our pallet bearing in for the rear race of the pinion gear, whatever you want to call it. And this needs to drive down in that bore, and it needs to go all the way to the bottom, which means it'll be below the surface. I just so happen to have the perfect piece of aluminum to drive that in there, and the reason I have it is when I used to do more transmissions, I made a bushing driver kit for a C4 automatic, or actually I used to run a C4 in the race car when it was a small block. So that bushing kit comes in handy for a bunch of other stuff. Okay, felt it stop. It was a little, there it goes. Something caught it. I cleaned it and deburred it all out. So. There it goes. Now I can get my driver to go down in there with it. That bottomed out. Don't want to get too crazy with forcing it down in there. Okay, I'm going to attempt to drive in my spring retainer, which kind of keeps that bearing from coming out. Not sure if it's absolutely necessary, honestly, because it drives in there pretty good. The whole idea is to drive it down in there, and those tabs on the outside of it bend, and it's stuck in there. They're hard to get out without tearing up, I know that, because I tore up my old one getting it in there. It's not working out too well for me right now. It's not good. I need something bigger to get it started. If I can just get it started straight, maybe this will do it. I'm not sure. Oh no, he's beating on it. Hey, that did it. Yep, it did. I can still go a little deeper. Sliding off. There we go. Alright. Now, let's try to go a little deeper. Maybe. Let's see. We don't want it to pop out for sure. Yeah, I think that's in there good. Bearing still spins freely. Let's stick this pinion in there. Feels pretty good. And that scraping noise you heard, that was the bottom of the gear rubbing this. It will not do that when it's bolted to the support. So don't be thinking something's wrong there. There are some YouTubers who think everything that everybody does is wrong. So that I cannot fix. Okay, when you want to use a depth tool to set your pinion depth, they usually write the distance that you need to achieve on the back of the pinion bearing on this surface. And they did. You can barely see it. And I had to take it out in the sunlight and get out my heavy duty reading glasses to see it. My eyes aren't that great, and they did not really make it all that clear. But I believe I see a 1 inch 29 thousandths, which I believe is the distance from the center of the ring gear to here. And I have a plate that I bolt down on there. It's perfectly flat. I forgot the exact thickness of it, but I def mic from the top of it to this when the pinion bearing is installed, and then I figure out how much shim I need to add or remove from this surface. So, and that is usually what you need. But even if you do that, I recommend using some grease or some gear marking compound, which I have around here somewhere, I think, and checking your wear pattern. And I'll show you how I do that after you get it all together. I did another video on it, but I'll kind of go over it again. Okay, so I got my big bearing pressed on. That went pretty smooth. You've seen me use my bearing press before, and you know how it works if you've watched my channel. If not, you just have to go back and look at my other videos. So how this Daytona pinion support is supposed to work: press your bearing, big bearing on there, and this here eliminates your crush sleeve. And the crush sleeve, which was on the original units with a regular stock pinion support, was like a collar with a lip in it, and you had to put all this together, put your yoke on it, put your big nut on it, and you had to torque it to, I think, 350 foot-pounds to crush the sleeve, and that was supposed to give you the correct preload on your pinion bearings. Well, all these aftermarket companies, Strange, Mark Williams, and several others have invented this setup where instead of the crush sleeve, you just put a spacer in there. Now this spacer here is in 2 pieces, and shims go in here, and that's what I had on my last ring and pinion. I don't know if my preload's going to be correct with this, but I'm going to try what I had first, since they are the same bearings, but it is a different pinion, and we'll see. I think this one's going to be a little harder, a little more trouble to do than my old one. Now my old one, I can't remember if I had polished it down or what, but the old one is a slip fit, whereas this one is kind of a press fit. So I'm going to have to set my support down on the bearing just like that. I already got my spacer in there. Bearing goes in here like this. I'm not going to put my seal in yet because we need to know that we got our correct preload. But if a preload isn't correct, I got to press this back apart and keep changing shims until I get the preload that I want. And there is a method to use with a torque wrench to determine whether you got correct preload. I think you're supposed to be able to chuck this up in a vise, and once you got all this tightened down, you should be able to take a torque wrench on the nut and be able to spin the bearing assembly with like 10 inch-pounds. I can't remember exactly. I go by feel. I make sure it spins free and it doesn't feel too tight. That's how I've always done it. But I'm going to have to press this together so I can get my nut on it. So let me press that on and we'll come back right here. Okay, so it looks like my original shims are going to work out just the same. I've got that pressed down on there. It pressed down pretty easy without too much fuss. And as you can see, which I had that dry right now, I need to put some oil in them bearings, but after we get everything set. And yeah, that spins good. I don't feel any play, but I'm still going to go ahead and put my pinion nut on it and find out whether I could torque that big thing to. I bet my torque wrench don't go that big for that huge 1 inch nut. But we'll get as tight as we can, and that should work. And there is a locking nut. It'll spin about halfway down, and then you feel it catch, which is probably why. Probably why I had so much trouble getting the old one off. It was the same way. Okay, after a quick little Google search, I found a helpful little website here. Let's see, it's Strange's website. I just Googled a 4 9-inch 35 spline pinion nut torque specs, and this popped up in the choices. And this actually tells you for all the rear ends. You got a Dana 60 Ford 8.8, Ford 9 inches, GM 7.5, GM 10 bolt, 12 bolt, Mopar 8 3/4. Everything you pretty much need to know about rear ends, differential as far as torque specs go. And on what I'm looking for, I'm not using a crush collar, as I said. And here we go, find Ford 9-inch again. And right there it says use crush collar, tighten nut until it takes 15 to 20 inch-pounds of torque to rotate the bearings. That don't mean tighten the nut to 20 inch-pounds, but you got to crush that sleeve, which I don't use a crush sleeve. I use the spacer, and it specifies somewhere the spacer. I just seen it. Ford 9-inch support. Let's see. Using crush collar. Using solid spacer. Okay, yeah. So using solid spacer on the 28 spline pinion, 200 foot-pounds, 35, which is mine, 250. So ideally, to get the correct amount of preload, I need to tighten my nut to 250 foot-pounds, if my wrench will go that high, and I should be able to turn that bearing with a wrench with at least 15 to 20 inch-pounds. So I'm going to grab something to eat, and we'll go back out there and see how all that works out. But yeah, Strange Engineering has a pretty handy little website. It gives all your torque specs. See, it gives you ring gear bolts, pinion support bolts, which isn't too awful critical, but it's nice to know all that. Bearing retaining screws, everything. So there you go. Okay, so my torque wrench only goes to 150 instead of 250. So I guess 150 is probably all I've ever tightened these, and they've never come loose, so we're going to have to live with that. I'm sure someone would tell me that is just so dangerous, but I've gotten by with it. I think if I remember right, I torqued it to 150 and took a strong arm and a big cheater bar and tried to crank it down a little more. I guess in order to do this to specs, should get a bigger torque wrench, but I don't have one right now. Now they recommend, I don't know if they do it on this type nut, they recommend Loctite. Right now I've got anti-seize on it because I don't want these threads to mess up like the old one did when I went to take it off. So that could make life really hard on us. We wouldn't want to ruin the threads on a brand new pinion. Hopefully, now this is the most solid vise I've got. Hopefully that it will hold this. If I really lay into it and it'll fly out, that would not be fun. Let's just take it to 150. Oh, I did not want that to happen. That's what I was afraid of. Now I'm going to chuck it right here. The surface I had it on was not the flat surface. Surface of the yoke in the vise. Let's try this right here. Try it again. I was afraid of that. Thought it'd be better off having a deeper device, but these surfaces are flat. That is not. So it's 150. Feels about right. Not too bad. Just get her strong on. And we're going to have to guess here. Go a little tighter. Got some serious precision torque wrenching in here now. Okay. Probably not quite 250, but it's going to have to do. Okay, this only goes, as low as this will go is 25 inch-pounds, and it turns it with ease. Just see what happens when I... Yeah, it turns it. It don't take much drag to do that, but it turns it. I don't feel any play in it. And that's with no oil. So I'm going to call that good. Now I get that nut back off. And put the seal in it. Looks like that anti-seize stopped it from messing up them threads. Maybe this nut wouldn't have done it anyway. I don't know what caused the other one to do it, for the old original one. But I will wash it off before I put it on for the last time. Just checking. Always check everything. Just get a little on that bearing before I drop it on the floor and run it. Don't worry, it's not going to be on the seal surface. I clean that off. There we go. It's supposed to get up in there anyway, but give it all the lubrication I can. Just so happens that a 3-inch piece of exhaust pipe is perfect for driving this seal in with the pinion still in. But I better get it straight. I got it really crooked. There we go. Gotta go in straight. Now, let's try this. You get a little bit crooked, that seal is not going to do its job. looks good. Okay, there's one thing that I told you wrong earlier. I told you that getting the pinion depth is measuring from the center of the ring gear to here. It's to here, the end of that bearing snub there. Been a while since I've done it, so I guess my memory was a little dusty on it, but I got to measure from the center of this to here. And here's how I do that. This is my homemade pinion depth checking gauge. And before you start judging that it's homemade, it works because it's the same concept as a pinion depth checking tool. The whole idea of a pinion depth checking tool is you measure from the center of your ring gear, which is the surface that your main cap bolts to. So I got this flat plate, which is 280 thousandths thick. It's got holes drilled to match up this bolt pattern. Bolted down good and tight. It's a good flat plate, made it where I used to work. And I'm going to take my calipers. I wish I had my def mics that reach that far, but I don't. They're at work, where I work at, because I'm a CNC machinist for a living. Okay, we got that set on 0 to check the depth. Now I'm going to use this square block. We call them 1, 2, 3 blocks in machine shops. And I'm using that to keep my calipers good and square. And I'm going to go down here and touch the top of that pinion. I'm getting 1 inch, 309 thousandths. 1 inch, 309. Get my calculator. And I go 1.309 minus the thickness of the plate, which is 280. And I'm getting 1 inch, 29 thousandths, which is what they have written on the pinion gear. That's supposed to be the depth from the center of your ring gear, which is also this surface here, to the very tip of your pinion gear. And like I said, after I get the ring gear in it, I will check the wear pattern. Okay, so I got my backlash set, and I've checked it all the way around. Right here I'm at about 5 thousandths. Yeah, it's about 5. Gotta zero that out. I don't know how well you can see that. Yeah, it's about 5. And to make sure the run out is good, see, I checked it in a bunch of different places. Now I was getting 6. That was before. Now I had the caps snugged down pretty good, the main caps, but I hadn't torqued them yet. But I have torqued them now, and this is the first time I'm rechecking everything after torquing them down. It does change it slightly. Seems to have closed everything up, maybe a thousandths, if any at all. I don't think it closed it up at all. Yeah, there we go. And I'm getting about 5.5 there. That was 6 before. That one was 5 before. You want to try to, it's kind of hard to hold that pinion perfectly, but that's in about 5. But I don't have anything holding the pinion solid, but when you're using the ring gear to turn everything, there is some resistance and you'll feel it. Just don't push it too hard and you'll get a pretty accurate reading of how much clearance you have. Now I have not checked the wear pattern yet, but like I said earlier in this video, we set the recommended pinion depth, and that's supposed to be good, but I'll call it a starting point because I always want to make sure that wear pattern. You never know. Whoever wrote that down might, who knows, might have made a mistake. Nothing against people. People make mistakes. I realize that. Some of the commenters don't seem to realize that, but they're a lot less forgiving than I am, that's for sure. But That's okay. We're doing work and they're commenting, so they don't really have any. Yeah, it's 4.5. Yeah. So that's looking good. I'm going to find something to check this wear pattern with, and show you what it looks like, and it's ready to go in the car after that. Okay, so I just used a blue paint marker to mark my gear. Not the best thing to use, but it's all I pretty much have around here. I don't know. I could have sworn I ordered some gear marking compound back when I did my Torino, and I can't find it anymore. Maybe it came in a little packet and I used it all. I don't know. But right here, this is the drive side. Sorry about that, got my hand in the way. That's the drive side right there. And according to their instructions, it's looking pretty good. If you look at that on the drive side, that's about what they're recommending. Let's see if I can get both of them in the camera there. Yeah, that's pretty close, and you can see where some of the paint from the marker wore off on the other gears, and they're all looking pretty good. Now I'm going to try the coast side by turning it backwards. Actually, I'm supposed to be putting a little resistance on the gear, but I'm holding the camera, so I may have to put some fresh marking on it. It's already dried. Yeah, it's not really showing up. Let me get it on there wet, and then we'll see what it looks like. There is the coast side. You can see some mark there. You can see where it tried to rub off. And I found out the best way to get it to scratch it up when doing the coast side is just take your ring gear and force the pinion to move. That might be the better way to put resistance on it when you're checking the other side too. But what you do is you do it just like it was coasting. Do it like that. Turn it. And if you look at that compared to the coast side, you can see it's pretty close to what they recommend. That's kind of in the middle, and that's about where I'm at. So we're ready to I'm going to put some of the retainers back on this, and we're ready to put this thing back in the car. I might go ahead and do that tonight. Wasn't sure if I was going to make it that far tonight or not. But you got your retainers, you just go like that. They keep the lash caps from moving on you. It is several days later. It's actually Tuesday after work, because I work all day. I'm not lucky enough to make a living off of YouTube, making videos, working on fun stuff. But we finally got it all together. Weather not cooperating. It's been cold again. Today's the best day it's been since Saturday. But everything's looking good. I don't see any leaks. Transmission probably needs another cord in it when I let it down on the ground. I don't have any leaks under there that I can see. When I get it down on the ground, I'm sure it'll read a little bit lower. But feels like it's shifting okay. We'll get it on the ground. See how that converter feels. I really have no doubts that converter from A1 transmissions will work pretty good. I'm hoping this thing will, hoping we can find that 1/10 of a second that we've lost and been trying to find for quite a while now. So next video, will be either at the track, or so for some reason the weather doesn't let me race this weekend, we might mess around with the Torino. I still need to get the hood back on it. So thanks for watching.